Okay, we are live. I'm getting the notice that this meeting is being live streamed. So hello to my Facebook friends. I am super excited to have Heather from FCT, which is a title insurance company, to chat with us. I am going to do my disclaimers. Number one, I have little dogs working from the home office, so they might bark because there's been a few deliveries today. My neighbor is doing yard work, so hopefully the noise isn't too long or loud, pardon me. And any information that is discussed now is basically relevant now. If down the road, years down the road, things might change. So always confer with your specialist or your expert in the area of the education or the conversation that we're talking about. So there we go, long-winded disclaimers. Heather, thank you for joining me today. I am super excited. I'm one of those, I always joke around saying that I always need to get education on fraud because my brain does not go there. And title fraud in Alberta, as you have told us recently, is on the rise. It was kind of funny because last week we did a seminar with MCAP, one of our lender partners. You came out to speak about title fraud in the digital age. And it's everything that I knew, but I was like, Kate, I need to get you out for a video. We need to discuss this. And then I did the Sherwood Park Trade Fair and discussed with people, the amount of people that don't have a mortgage, which is an amazing thing. But it leaves you susceptible, that's not even the right word, it leaves you open to potential title fraud. So how about you can let us know who you are, how long you've been in the business, and who FCT is.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. And thank you for having me. So my name is Heather Thoma. I'm the Director of Business Development here in Western Canada for our organization, First Canadian Title, FCT. And we have been in the market for many years. We actually are the pioneer of bringing the concept of title insurance to the Canadian marketplace back in 1991. And since then, we've been growing in our knowledge and our expertise all across Canada, where we are supporting Canadian homeowners and lenders and mortgage professionals and real estate professionals every single day. In saying that, one of the things that we are here to talk about today is, in fact, title fraud. And as a Canadian title insurer, the only Canadian title insurer, in fact, regulated by OSFI in Canada, we really pride ourselves on being that market expert, not only in all areas of fraud and forgery and exposure, but everything that we take care of from a title insurance and a title risk standpoint.
Awesome. Okay. So when we're talking about title fraud, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is how easy it is to actually look up a title and see what's registered on that title. So for those of you who may not know what a title is, it's like what you hear from the movies, a deed in the States. It confirms who owns the property and if there's anything registered against it. So when we're saying that we're registering things against it, usually things that get registered against a title would be your mortgage. Or sometimes there's like the county has an encroachment where utility right of way saying you're not allowed to put things on the property from this part because the utilities have to go through there, right? So did I explain that kind of the proper way?
Absolutely. So a title is effectively the deed of the property. It is the life story of the property and all those who have an interest stake in that piece of land. And really what it comes down to is there's a whole myriad of items that can ever show up on there, but there is, as you noted, a very accessible system. And a lot of people are surprised. You might think that your land title is a private document, when in fact it's actually a public document on a public registry with access in Alberta to any particular individual who has the search features to obtain that document. And that does allow a little bit of exposure when we look at it from a fraud standpoint.
Yeah. So one of the, I keep saying so all the time, I keep catching myself, so bear with me. One of the things that that is kind of scary is when you look at that title, all the wonderful people that came up to me and they were like, oh, I don't have a mortgage. On one hand, I want to celebrate with them, but on the other hand, I was like, so do you have anything to protect your title? And they give me this blank stare. So I was telling a lot of people on the weekend about homeowners FCT title insurance product and where they can get that homeowners policy to protect themselves. So I'll kind of talk about what one of the situations that I know of a fraud. So, you know, the bad guy goes and finds out ways to search your title and finds a title that has nothing on it, meaning you're free and clear. You've done an amazing job and you've paid off your mortgage and there's nothing there showing up on it anymore. Now, there's impersonation going on. These people have decided to pretend to be you, and because there isn't a mortgage on there, there's nobody to call and get a discharge statement from. So now, you know, really low level of explanation is that these people then go and they apply for a mortgage in the homeowner's name. They get the mortgage funds and they leave the homeowner in the bag for the mortgage. And then all of a sudden, you know, this mortgage isn't being paid for and foreclosure starts. So that's basically one kind of really low level explanation of what happens. But Heather, I know you've got other examples of title fraud as well. So I'll let you explain, because you explained it way better than I did and more eloquently.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. And, you know, I think the thing that we want to acknowledge on the front end is, what are fraudsters? Fraudsters are individuals who have a lot of sophistication and strategy to their plan. And unfortunately, that comes off the victimization of others to achieve that outcome. And that's really the negative aspect of this whole experience, is that, you know, they're really looking to win off of someone else's loss. When we look at fraud, what we're really seeing is that exact scenario has absolutely always been a consistent real estate problem, not only in Canada, but internationally. Somebody going and registering an interest on your property that gives them a financial benefit and absconding with said money and leaving that titled owner on the hook is absolutely very common. But what we do see as we've grown in terms of knowledge and technology in the entire world that we are all navigating and living in every single day, we are continuing to see a level of sophistication amplifying. And this has also been a bit of a concern when you look at technology brings lots of benefits to all of us in our day-to-day life, but it also levels up everybody that intends to use it negatively. And that sophistication is transferred from ways where we have always traditionally seen title insurance, but with kind of predictable characteristics to it. We're now seeing that change in scope and scale. These fraudsters are becoming a lot savvier and a lot smarter with their intent. And that's always scary, I think, for anybody, because this is always a cat and mouse game of who's getting ahead better, faster, smarter. In fact, FCT is quite proud that we have 2 certified fraud examiners on staff, and we're the only company in Canada that ensures that we have that certified fraud examiner skill level to come in and understand this growing sophistication. Things that we are beginning to see where properties are actually being fraudulently sold from the title owner by a fraudulent individual through means of impersonation, sophisticated and savvy ID production, all of these components that continue to enable this behavior to come through always come together. But it's scary to know that it's not only the risk of somebody coming in and placing mortgage or financing on your property, but also the risk of somebody simply selling it from underneath you. And in Alberta, when you have a perfect storm of an accessible title system, knowledgeable fraudsters, and a lot of people with high equity in their homes, it becomes a perfect storm environment for trouble.
Yeah, it's As you know, I started off the conversation with me having to take courses to stay up on the fraud, because my brain really doesn't work that way. But it's true, right? Like, and this is one of the reasons why when I'm asking for documents, it's the whole KYC, which is, you know, in that's our industry lingo, but it's know your client. So I'm asking for all these extra documents so that I can prove to the lender who you are. I may know you, and I may be sitting down and having coffee with you and knowing exactly who you are, but the person on the other end of that application, they don't. So they need to make darn sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and that you are who you say you are. So
Yeah. You know what, I hear a lot, and I mean, I'm a homeowner myself, and I know that when I go through a mortgage application or really any financial inquiry anywhere, there is paperwork. There sometimes is an exceptional amount of paperwork, but I don't look at it from an aspect of inconvenience, which I might have back in a time where I didn't have this knowledge or understanding. Now I look at it as a significant benefit for me. There are all these professionals and experts looking into making sure that I'm not at risk either, that this is a financial fit, that this is also a scenario where I am the true owner of the property. Because if I wasn't, and how would I feel about that? I'd be incredibly upset if somebody was to abscond with equity in my home or sell my house, even worse, from underneath me. And there was the opportunity that somebody could have just asked another question that would have gotten the answer the way it needed to be made.
yeah, no, that's crazy. So then for the clients that maybe don't have an FCT homeowners policy, so there's two ways you can get it. You can either, when you purchase your home, you can ask your lawyer to purchase an FCT homeowner policy for you. And there's usually a discount on that, correct? At the time of purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about an owner policy in general, as it relates. So a lot of times when you are either purchasing a property or you are an owner of a property, but predominantly in a purchase environment, you are looking at all of these considerations for closing. And the legal professionals that are doing the great work that they do every single day, they're combing through that same information, looking for hot spots. But sometimes best laid plans are simply best laid plans, and there are unfortunate outcomes. And as Canadians, we are generally a little bit in that planning protective nature. We are a little more conservative, and we want to have an outcome option. We want that recourse. This is why insurance plays such a big financial role all across Canada in so many different forms. And title insurance is another layer to all of this. So title insurance for an owner actually has 33 different areas of coverage, and fraud and forgery as it relates to the title is one of those components. It's generally the scariest by all means, especially when you look at it at claims risk. And not only are we going to protect from losses that arise as a result of that scenario, should it meet the conditions and the coverages within the title policy, but what we also have is something called duty to defend, which is part of the title insurance and over and above the insured value of the property. And why I think duty to defend is such a critical component is this is in fact actually an area we see triggered for many homeowners in fraud. In the event of fraud, you have also a secondary responsibility to prove that it was not you as an individual that completed said fraud, or that to ultimately prove that you were a victim. This often can come with legal costs to defend that positionary right to your title. And what we do under our duty to defend consideration is that we were actually, as the title insurer, responsible for incurring those legal costs associated to defending that positionary right. So in the case of fraud, I'm going to kind of break this down in a real scenario because it's always easier to understand real life examples. So say somebody comes and takes the equity out of your home. You've paid off your mortgage years ago, and you are just enjoying the quiet life of your property now. That somebody comes in fraudulently and they put a $165,000 mortgage on the property. They take that money because there's no barriers, no anything that has proven that this is a red flag. They take the money and they disappear. Months later, as that financial institution or vendor has not received said payments for that loan agreement, they now move to foreclosure proceedings. And that homeowner, that titled owner, gets a notice and they say, hey, I don't have financing with XYZ company. What is going on? And lo and behold, the fraud comes to light. Yes, there are legal professionals involved. Yes, there are police involved or investigative practices being made. Yes, there is a final outcome where maybe you're going to have to go to court. And there are losses, not only in the mortgage, but in all of those professionals that you need to engage to prove that something was done negatively to you, that you were the victim. Can you imagine having a $20,000 lawyer expense to defending your positionary right for something that you didn't do? It would be violating, not only to go through that experience, but to really have that no option outcome. Whereas title insurance is there to act as a recourse and a liaison model to guide you through these next steps, because they are going to be unfortunate. And we wish that it would never happen to anybody, but the reality is that it does happen. And it is so much better to have a plan and a team of professionals to get you through that really awful experience.
Proactive versus reactive.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. It's about being smarter. Sometimes you can't stop things. We do so much diligence in this industry and we work collectively to the best of our abilities, but these guys can be sneaky and they can be very good and very enterprising at what they do. So as I noted earlier, it can be a cat and a mouse. So when it does happen, gosh forbid, at least having a planned recourse is so important. And when you look at title insurance at time of purchase, as you noted, is generally a lender is looking to protect their interest with the mortgage financing by placing a condition of that financing to say, hey, a policy must be obtained for me as the lender to protect the interest that I'm carrying in this land. But the owner has their choice as to whether they'd like to get their own policy to protect them. And as I noted, and as you noted, at time of purchase, they actually get a bit of a discount on that particular purchase, because there's a lot of knowledge and conveyancing and insights and sort of all of those characteristics that we have to assess for that purpose of insurance being done at that time. And so we can give a little bit of a cost savings because one's already being originated. Let's put them together and wrapper this in a really deep level of protection.
Yeah. And then there, if say, because I'm finding that a lot of lawyers or solicitors' offices may not even know so much about the homeowner's policy and the benefits. So or the other case is the homeowner is just tapped out at that point, and they just don't want to incur the additional expense. So there is the option to put a homeowner policy on after possession, and
Absolutely.
even years after.
Absolutely. Any owner is able to purchase a title insurance policy to protect them for a myriad of risks. As I noted, there's 33 different areas of layers of coverage and risk profiles that we can manage for them. But when it comes down to it, at any time, a property owner can purchase a policy. And it's so simple. It's as easy as going to our website, fct.ca, and right on the right-hand side of that page, there's actually a little button you can just click that says order a policy. And we'll go through that whole experience of underwriting, assessing, reviewing the policy coverages with that particular customer as it pertains to their lands. And then we can really take care of them from there. It is unfortunate that there are inconsistencies on the homeowner front as to them obtaining an owner policy. And you nailed it. In time of purchase, so many of our legal partners are out there having those conversations, but sometimes a customer just simply chooses not to proceed. And whether that's because buying a house can be a little overwhelming, in case anybody didn't know, it can feel a little overwhelming. And there's a lot of the word insurance jumping around in that conversation. And we know that it can get lost in the wash in terms of translating. What is the value? What does this mean? And we also know that traditionally Canadians are familiar with an insurance model where there's ongoing premiums. It isn't a pay one time, have it for the lifetime of your interest in the property. Title insurance does work a little different than conventional insurance. We don't have ongoing premiums. It is a one-time purchase, and you are protected for the lifetime of your titled interest in that land. That said, again, as we look to all of this, there are so many ways to close real estate transactions that we know there's inconsistency. We know that owners aren't always getting their policy, and we want them to have that option to seek that recourse or those solutions or those protections, even after that closing date.
Yeah, no, there's just, it's so much to know when you're purchasing a home and so many things to go over. And you're right. Insurance this, insurance that, insurance, here, there, everywhere. Like there's so many different insurance, and it could boil down to, well, I have insurance, I'm good. So there's absolutely, if you're ever unsure and you're working with me, all you do is you just call me up, send me an email. Lisa, what is this? Do I have this? What's going on? Right. So, and we talk about whether it's right for your needs or not. Now, so ways to protect yourself besides getting a policy. Are there other things that you can do to protect your title besides getting a homeowner's policy?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that owners can and could be doing to protect themselves. So first and foremost, absolutely, I cannot stress this enough, you must have an owner policy, because that's your ultimate path of recourse. That is the only way in Canada, other than, maybe some secondary back-end support systems, that you are going to be able to have an option or a path to managing this outcome should it happen. But things that you can do outside of that, checking your credit bureau is a great way to see if anybody's snooping around on there doing credit inquiries. Most online banking profiles will have a free credit bureau access check. Use it once in a while. It doesn't have to be daily by any means, but it does need to be annually. Maybe just a little glimpse or a glance at it. It's also a great way to hold yourself financially accountable if you're making financial goals. So that's another little benefit of that behavior. One of the ways that I like to call it a speed bump. It's like putting a speed bump on a road. It's going to force people to slow down and take a quick breath. A mortgage or a HELOC is another deterrent on title, because it's creating that noise, right? Is it going to prevent something from happening in every single scenario? Absolutely. We can't say with confidence that it would, but it does act like a speed bump. It will slow things down. It will involve more people, and more hands in the cookie jar generally mean more eyes on the deal, more oversight, more questions, and more investigation. And again, that's just a really great practice. With snowbirds, having somebody that you trust supporting and keeping an eye on your property, making sure that there isn't a for sale sign that pops on the lawn while you're on holidays in the sunny south. That's something that we do know is happening. And again, it has to be a trusted professional, because I think one thing to note about fraud is a lot of people think it's these big, massive, enterprising rings of bad guys or anything of that like. And that's sometimes the scenario. But sometimes the scenario is also worse in that it's a friend or a family member. It's a tenant impersonating an owner in an investment property. There are so many ways that this can actually translate. And that's why when you fundamentally backtrack to the baseline answer, having a model of recourse, a financial protection around your property security with that homeowner policy is so critical.
Yeah. Oh, I could just talk about this for hours.
Me too.
No, we know that people aren't going to watch us for hours, but it's so entertaining, not entertaining, educational, interesting. It just gets my mind really kind of the gears going. One thing I'd love to do though down the road, and you and I can take this off the video, is to get a few more of these calls in and these Facebook Lives in to discuss the other benefits of a homeowner policy, just to get that education out there, because I have a scenario that I want to talk to you about. But again, we'll take it offline. That Zoom phrase that's been people are teasing about. So Is there anything else that you want people to know about, specifically homeowners to know about title fraud that you haven't brought up? I think we've covered a lot, but you might have something else you want to share.
I think the big thing is to never look at it and say this is an urban market problem. That, you know, we have a lot of customers that live in rural communities, bedroom communities. This is not an Edmonton and Calgary only problem. This is certainly not a Toronto and Vancouver problem. We continue to see these examples take place time and time again. One of the growing concerns is elder abuse. And I think that that is a really heartbreaking scenario. I think the other layer to add to that is trusting and knowing who you're interacting with. Aggressive door-to-door salesmen or those phone scammers that endlessly call and want to sell you this gadget or this home inspection or this cleaning service. All of those can be an example of a fraudster. Is it to say that in every circumstance they are? Absolutely not. Of course, we all get calls from valid vendors, but to be diligent, to, if you ever have that intuition or that spidey sense that something feels a little fishy, trust your instincts. The universe has blessed us with that gift, and we need to give it the acknowledgement and power that it does provide for all of us. I know as a mortgage professional in the time when I was doing that, there were a few files that dropped on my desk that my spidey senses tingled. And in both scenarios that I can think of off the top of my head, both were scenarios we chose not to proceed with. And it was trusting those instincts. And again, it's really about protecting yourself and being smart and savvy, because you know that bad guys have that intent. So how are we going to outwit them? How are we going to outlast them? And it's about having really strong plans, working with experts and professionals just like yourself, because that is the gift you give every day, is your knowledge and your expertise and your professionalism, and really making sure that you are being diligent and responsible in how you interact.
Yeah, I was going to say professional, well, but no, I'm just teasing, you know. If you saw me at the trade fair this weekend, I might have been rocking out to some music from my neighbor, but you know, having fun. So,
you know what? We can have fun in this industry while we are being experts as well.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, like I said, I've really enjoyed, I always enjoy chatting with you and learning from you. You are one of the really strong partners in the industry that I lean on quite frequently. There's been a couple of emails to you lately. So, so I really do appreciate the partnership. And if anybody out there watching this has any questions, please reach out. It doesn't matter if you're a client of mine or not. I want to make sure that you're protected, and I want to point you in the right direction. So once again, Heather, thank you so much. And everybody else, like, let's hope the boys do a little bit better tonight.
Go Oil.
Go Oil. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for coming out.